Hello everyone, it's Karen. Welcome and thanks for joining me again. Today I've got a couple of Peekaboo Shaker cards that I wanted to share with you. I'm starting with the first one. I'm using the cracked stencil from Paper Rose and some Catherine Pooler inks. And I'm just doing a random inking pattern here, and I went back over the white part with the lightest color. I think the Catherine Pooler inks I used were, the lightest one is Chiffon, then Shea Butter and Sauna. I'm using the Stitched Rectangles dies. They just were the right size for the aperture that I wanted because I wanted to cut out this little gnome and he just fit into this opening. So you can see I'm using the smaller of the two rectangle dies and I'm taping it in place. I've got my ruler to make sure I'm going fairly straight. And once I cut that out, I have, I think, 4 more pieces of cardstock that were the same size as my front. And I am just lining those up and putting that die cut piece back in place, holding it down, and I'm going to tape it down, and then I can put my die over that and it will really notch into place. If you have it right, it just fits right over it and you can feel it sort of sink down. So then I'm just taping it down and die cut that out, and it fits perfectly behind this front cover. And then I did that for the remaining pieces. Now this is my card base and I have to do the same on the front of this in order for that to go through. So exactly the same thing. I'm just putting that cutout piece in and notching, and just make sure when you die cut it that you open up the card. Otherwise it'll be a problem. So here I wanted to make a frame, and I've got, these are the second and third smallest rectangles from that set. And I am just taping them together. I've got them fairly evenly spaced, and I die cut 3 of these and glued these frames together, and that will go over it. But at this point I decided I wanted more on my front of the card. So I've got my Nuvo Glimmer Paste in Moonstone, and I've put that die cut piece back in because, you know, why waste all that paste if I can put it on that little scrap? So there you can see the shine. Once it's dry, it's just beautiful. Okay, so here I've cut 2 pieces of acetate that are just slightly bigger than that die cut piece, and I'm putting double-sided adhesive all around the opening on the front of my card, the front of the card and on this front cover piece. And then I'm just putting the acetate in place, and I like to use my bone folder to make sure it's really secured. And here it is on the front the front card base. And then I just put glue all around that, the card. I sort of tried to steer a bit clear of that opening because I didn't want glue on my acetate. And then I just glued each of these background pieces in place and just tried to make sure they were all lined up. You can see how thick that is, but you need that for the well. Now here I've got my little gnome cut out, and I've got glue on the back, and I'm just positioning him in that window where I think I want him to be lined up. And once I've got him roughly where I want, I put the card down and just close the back up and over, and it will catch that little gnome where he should be. And with glue you can move it around a little bit if it's not quite exactly right. So the shaker mix I'm using is the clear crystal shaker mix. And this stuff is beautiful. I use this actually on the front of my card sometimes just to add a really pretty sparkle. But here I'm putting it in as a shaker mix, and I'm going all around with glue again. Now this is when you want to make sure your acetate is clean, and so if you do have any glue or anything on, you can use a little rubbing alcohol or isopropyl alcohol just to clean off the acetate, and then I just sort of buff it again. And then I'm sort of starting from the bottom because there's always static from the acetate, and so often those little gems will jump up. So I was carefully applying this to the bottom first, and then, you know, pressing it down at the top, and then I can put the white frame on. Now you could leave it at this. The mix moves really well inside. It's quite pretty, but I wanted to do a little bit more. So I am going to now make some flowers, and I'm using this Foamoran, or it's art foam, to make my flowers. I did do this in another video, I just didn't show how I did it, but this is the paper I have. It's art foam paper from Heartfelt. There's lots of this on Amazon, Foamoran paper. You can buy it colored. I prefer it white. But there you can see the difference in the thickness between a regular craft foam and this kind of foam. It's quite thin. And so what I do, I was using this Elodie Flower Builder die set because that's a really nice shape for these flowers. Both of those will work, even the etched one works nicely. And so I'm folding my paper over 4 times and I just want to see how much to cut off. So this is the easiest way to cut it. It's super easy to cut through. And then I run this through with 2 layers of thickness in my die cutting machine. I know other people have done it with more, but I prefer with 2, and then I know that they've all cut out. And they come out really easily. They're just very delicate little flowers. But, well, they're delicate, but they're quite sturdy, you'll see. Now, you can then color them in, or what you could do is color that foam first. But I find when I do that, it takes a long time for this ink to dry, and so I'm not patient enough to let it dry. So this is what I do. I'm actually sticking it right on my ink pad, and then I sort of blend it around after. And it stays wet for quite a long time, really, this ink. Now here's a comparison with paper. I'm just dabbing some on a piece of white copy paper, and that's it compared to that flower. So you can see how pale it really goes. So you may want to consider that when you choose the color that you put on, is how dark or how light you'd like the flower to be. But here you can see you can ink blend all around the edges, you can ink blend the centers, you know, just like you would with a paper flower. So it is kind of fun. It's a different kind of a flower. You can see there, it's still, I don't know, it's not super dark or anything. You can color the back. I have more ink on my fingers, I think, than I do on that flower. But here's how you shape them. So you need a soft pad. So this is an old mouse pad, your reverse tweezers, and a craft iron. And I have my iron set on a low setting. I think it was set at maybe 2 on my iron. You put the colored side down, and whatever side is facing the iron is going to pop back up and away from the iron. So you can see how it sort of cupped that flower up from the center. And then I just use a ball stylus to help shape that a little bit more. Now here I was just experimenting with this. I thought, what if I twisted it up and maybe made the petals go backwards if I put the back side of the petals against the iron. And it sort of worked, but I wouldn't say it was highly successful. It does help though to shape the petals so that they go backwards a bit at the tips, so that's something to consider. And I think that if you had different shaped petals, like maybe a chrysanthemum or something with longer petals, you may want to do that more effectively. So just reshaping that center. Now I don't know if you can see, but a couple of those petals did go backwards on the top, on the tips of them. Not horribly well, I wouldn't say though. Maybe it just needed to be on the iron a little bit longer. I really don't know. I've just started doing this, and so I'm not an expert by any means. So here is the center, and it is, again, I did color the back of this a little bit because it pops up a little bit more. But it will really curl up and hold its shape. So you can see there how much they've curled. And then to put those together, I just use my hot glue gun, just a little bead of glue in the center. And then I just attach the center into that. And again, I shaped it with the ball stylus just to help keep that shape and curl everything up again. And then once those dried, I used a piercing tool to just poke a little hole into the center of the flowers. And it's really easy to poke through that. And I've got these flower stamens. The white ones were just off Amazon, and the pink ones are from Dress My Craft, and they have a bit of a sparkle to them. They're quite pretty. So I've taken about 3 of them, and I've sort of folded the ends together and rolled the ends a bit. And then I'm just going to poke them through this opening. Now really, it would have been easier if I'd gotten a piece of wire and pulled them through, but you can see how delicate that flower is. It's delicate, but it keeps its shape. It's kind of intriguing, I find. So I'm just putting a little bead of glue on the back of that string once I have those stamens where I want them. And when that's dried, I just cut off the excess string, and there's your flower. So fairly easy, I think. So then on my card, I decided to take this sentiment from the black and white sentiment sheets on the inside. I've just stuck that to the bottom. Now when you close this, all that shaker mix sort of covers it up fairly well. But I put the flowers down at the bottom, which also helps to hide that sentiment. And I'm just using hot glue to attach these. Now, if you do use hot glue, don't put it on the acetate because that may melt it and then you'll have shaker mix everywhere. So I've just put them on the frame or on the outside of the frame. I foiled that sentiment from the black and white sentiments, and I've just added that to the front. And there's the inside. Now, while I was doing this, I had a thought after I'd done this card. I have this shrink plastic that I've had, I'm sure, for over 10 years. And I thought, well, maybe this would make some fun shaker bits. So I wanted to try that. So you can buy this. Mine's frosted. You can buy this shrink plastic on Amazon. I'm sure craft stores still carry it. But you can see I've just cut a strip and I've die cut some the same Elodie Flower Builder dies out of it. And I'm putting the inks on just like I did with the other one, with the other flowers. But in this case, the shrink plastic shrinks significantly. I think it's 75% that it will shrink down. So whatever color of ink you put on is going to be very concentrated. So bear that in mind. The other flowers with the foam went lighter. These are going to go darker. So here I've shrunk them in the toaster oven, just followed the directions. And that's how big they are now. So there's the die, just for a comparison. And here I've put them into my shaker. I've made the shaker the same as the other one. That cover plate die is the hand stitching cover plate. And I've got some gold foiled sheet behind. And I just thought that was kind of fun that you could make those into shakers. And it could be any die cut shape that you use in that for shaker mix. So thanks for joining me, everybody. I hope I've given you a few ideas here today. And I hope you'll come back for the next video. Thanks and have a great day.